welcome to Catholic Current, where we discuss our faith and give you an update on events affecting the Church in the United States. From Washington, D.C., I'm Maura Moser. This week, our guest is Andrew Middleton from the Archdiocese of Baltimore. Andrew is the director of the Archdiocese's ministry to seafarers, called Apostleship of the Sea. He has been working for years to aid mariners, a ministry that has become ever more important in recent months. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you for having me.
So you are the director of the Apostleship of the Sea for the Archdiocese of Baltimore. What does this role usually entail?
Our ministry is a ministry to seafarers. We go into the port every day and board the vessels, spend some time with the crew in conversation and prayer, and make every effort to meet their needs while they're in the port of Baltimore. Being part of the larger network of Apostleship of the Sea and Seafarers, we play our little part in Baltimore, and we can, pass on the information or needs of a vessel to other centers throughout the country and the world.
What kinds of needs might the mariners have?
Whether it be shopping trips or a doctor's appointment, making connections with family, or perhaps the Seafarers Union if there's a labor issue on board. We can make all those contacts, provide transportation for religious services or shopping, back to the Seafarer Center just to relax for a little bit, just kind of taking care of the whole person from a Catholic perspective.
So usually the work of the Apostleship of the Sea goes largely unnoticed, but in the early hours of March 26th, the Dali container ship struck the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore, causing it to collapse and sadly killing 6 of the workers who were on that bridge at the time. I was out of the country at that time, but it made international headlines. It was such a big story. What was that day like for you?
It was shocking for someone who grew up in Baltimore and never knew life without the Key Bridge, to wake up in the early morning and turn the radio on and hear almost the first words on the radio that the Key Bridge had collapsed, and then to turn on the television and see the video of it and hear the name of the vessel mentioned. That was a little bit disbelief that morning, but almost immediately upon hearing the name of the vessel, I realized that we had transported them both on Sunday and Monday prior to their sailing, and that I had contact information for at least a few crew members on the vessel. So I immediately just grabbed my phone and sent messages via WhatsApp just to make sure that everyone in the crew was okay. One of the crew members answered me within 3 or 4 minutes saying that everyone was okay, which was a relief for me. And then the next thought was, how do we start serving them now? That changed over the following days and weeks and now months. But we've done our best to meet their needs.
And what has happened with the ship and its crew since that time?
Initially they were stuck out in the river for 2 months almost. And they had to deal with basically their home. I don't want to say being invaded because it's not the word. It's not. They weren't invaded, but NTSB on board, and then the FBI on board, and salvage workers and technical people being on board. It's a full house, for lack of a better way to put it. Bishop Parker and I were able to make our way out there May 1st and spend some time with the crew, and you could see their concern for the situation, not only for themselves but for the victims and the victims' families. It was interesting in that Bishop Parker celebrated a mass for 3 of the crew members. I think there's 5 or 6 Catholics on board, and 3 of them were available for his mass. And he mentioned the victims' names during the Mass, and then after the Mass, one of the crew members wanted to look at the list of names that he had with him, because as that crew member said, he wanted to be able to pray for them by name, which for me was touching, and it showed the concern the crew has for not just themselves, but for the bigger world that's been impacted by this incident.
Yeah. So you were there on May 1st, the feast of St. Joseph the
Yes.
Worker, as it so happened. And I understand even that journey was not easy to make. Would you kind of take us through how you got on board the ship?
So the ship management company had reached out to me maybe the end of the first week of April, beginning of the second week, because they were aware that we had contact with the crew and were remaining in contact with the crew after the incident, to invite me out to spend some time with the crew. Unfortunately, the initial day that was scheduled, we had some bad weather move in, and no one was comfortable with Bishop Parker and I going out to the vessel in bad weather. So it was pushed off to the following week. Then the FBI boarded the vessel and began their investigation. So it was rescheduled a third time. And that date was kind of left out up in the open. And then eventually, yes, on May 1st, we made it out to the vessel. And it couldn't have been a more beautiful day for the ride out there. It was, the water was calm and it was sunny and it was warm. And Bishop Parker and I actually had a little conversation about it being the feast day of St. Joseph the Worker. And I had mentioned that morning he had crowned the Blessed Mother statue in the lobby of the Chancery building. And I commented to him that, the weather and the fact that we were going out there may have been due in part to her intercession. And it was at that point that he pointed out also that it was the feast day of St. Joseph the Worker. So God had a hand in that visit. And I was thankful to be able to get out there, and even more thankful for Bishop Parker being able to go out and celebrate Mass for the Catholic crew members.
That's wonderful. What was the reaction of the crew to your visit?
Initially, they were a little shy.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of had to break the ice. We got them to go around and say their names and where they were from, if they were married or had any children. And once we kind of got that ball rolling, they opened up a little bit and started to, kind of poke fun at one another and joke with us and one another as well. So that kind of, I think, put everyone at ease and made our presence there a little bit more enjoyable for them. They had a cadet on board who I asked to tell a joke to kind of try and break the ice, and he was a little shy at first. And then he finally said he had a joke, and as he started to tell the joke, I wasn't sure where the joke was going. And I thought, oh, please, dear God, let this be a clean joke with Bishop Parker here. So it ended up being a funny joke, and it was clean. So we distributed some care packages that had been sent by a lady in Minnesota who saw a story on the news and felt compelled to reach out and try to help them. She had T-shirts made up, and so we were able to deliver those along with some chocolates that she had sent and other things. It ended up being a nice visit, and hopefully we brought a little bit of joy and peace to the crew that day.
Mm-hmm. Because they were expecting this to be a much shorter journey. Is that right?
Yeah, their schedule when they left Baltimore was to sail to Sri Lanka, which was going to take about 28 days. So initially they were mentally prepared for a 28-day journey at sea and not having much contact. And then the events unfolded the way they did, and they were stuck out in the middle of the river for 2 months. And I'm sure if you even remove the circumstances of what happened, just being stuck there for 28 days, being able to see green land and not be able to set foot on it can be, stressful in its own right.
Are they allowed to get off the ship for any reason?
At this point, the only reason that they'd be able to get off would be for a medical emergency. The unions are working on trying to have some sort of shore leave granted them. At this point, I don't know if it's going to happen, but we've made efforts to take some fun to them. Cricket season started June 1st, so we were able to get a laptop and a Wi-Fi hotspot on board, and I linked it to the television that they had in one of the lounges so that they can watch cricket. Their big match is coming up this Sunday, India versus Pakistan, and they have a watch party planned. So that'll be good for them.
Mm-hmm. So Andy, as you mentioned, the Apostleship of the Sea is a national and a global outreach ministry of the Catholic Church, working in ports all around the world. How did you personally get involved in this work?
I began volunteering in 2009. My wife had retired from the police department and opened up a children's consignment shop next to the Seafarers Center's old location. My predecessor, Monsignor Fitzgerald, would speak to her just about every day when he came in. And he kind of started her off with, can you get this package when it's delivered? Or, can you just hold on to things? And I always like to say, once he and I met, he set the hook and slowly reeled me in. It started off with, would you be interested in volunteering 1 day a week? That turned into 3 days a week. That turned into a volunteer position as kind of like the ship's visiting coordinator. When his health started to decline, and he finally decided he was going to retire, he and the Archbishop had a conversation and decided that I was the man to replace him. So in 2019, I took over as an employee of the Archdiocese and director of the Apostleship of the Sea. It's a fun ministry. When I'm trying to recruit new volunteers, I always tell people, if you want to travel the world and never leave home, this is the place to do it. I've met people from all over the world and had food from all over the world and never been more than 10 minutes from home.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Andy, for joining us here in the studio. And thank you for joining us for this edition of Catholic Current. Next week, we'll be coming to you from Louisville at the Bishop's Spring Plenary Assembly. We'll have back-to-back shows on Thursday and Friday, June 13th and 14th. You can find out more about this week's topic by visiting us online at usccb.org or follow us on social media at USCCB. I'm Maura Moser. See you next week.